extended album.
I'll buy
The unofficial form.
it.
Extended.
Okay, perfect. All right. Excellent. Okay, we're officially streaming to YouTube. Everything is recording. All the ducks are in a row. Alma's seeing a really great behind the scenes of how all this works. um, so with that being said, I know Barbie's still in transit. So Alyssa, since you kind of took the lead on drafting some things, do you want to take the lead on? Yeah,
Talking about the annual report? Sure.
that's the only thing I have on the agenda today. So.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I think so. Yes, I really was like, where do I start? So I just took the annual report from last year, honestly, and like kept the bits that kind of go over the history of the committee and the policy. And then I populated um the recommendations that we discussed at our last meeting into it. Let me just look at it while I'm talking to you because
Sorry, that was distracting.
Are you able to, this is Barbie, are you able to share your screen, Alyssa? That's amazing. I love it.
yeah. Let me get it all lined up here.
And I'll, yeah, make sure that you have ability to share screen. It doesn't say you can't. Okay, you should be good to share whenever you're ready. Let me know if it doesn't work.
I'm sending you a request to share my screen.
Perfect. Look at that.
Just a heads up, I'm gonna have to jump off at around like 6:40 to get to my school's graduation.
Oh, wow. My gosh, what tests? Okay, yes, that's important.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
Okay.
We're gonna be done way before that, Tess. You need to get there.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Test to be
Okay.
clear, you're not graduating, correct? You're
No,
just,
but I have to perform at it.
yeah, that's important. But I just wanted to make sure it's not literally your
Yeah,
graduation.
no.
Because I was like, we know you're committed, but that's a lot.
That's really cool. Okay, can everybody see my screen?
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. My million tabs that are open. Um, so this is just like the cover page. So what we discussed in our last meeting, no, sorry. So first I went through what the recommendations were for last year, and tried to talk about, so I said the previous recommendations focused on increased transparency, fundraising efforts, for project management and implementation and student engagement. And then I highlighted these four main successes, where we basically, not I say we, but where you all, Kat, sort of shined in those areas. And I just took that from the presentation that you made for us, the PowerPoint. And then I talked about our three recommendations, which were, so this is the executive summary where we would be summarizing what we will then go into greater detail in the body of the report. And the three recommendations that we had discussed in our last meeting was really focusing on if like kind of prioritizing strategies from the policy that align with PPS goals. So like how PPS has a goal for, teachers to be and students to be in safe and comfortable school environments. So focusing on HVAC upgrades, talking about the efficiency and electrification in our high school modernization, student engagement with the PSEF grants. We talked about making sure that there was a increased transparency, which it seems like we have that opportunity to do utilizing the dashboard tool. And then this was something I think that Jane maybe brought up, which was to protect the programs that are already in place, which I thought was a really important one to bring out. So then we had talked about some ideas too, right? When we were talking about mobilizing like a community group of volunteers. I wasn't sure if we wanted to say that they should do that, but I figured we should say that they could explore some of those opportunities. And then I went into, yeah, I think this is the introduction that was kind of cut and pasted from last year, to be honest, with all of our public meetings. This is where I stopped because I kind of didn't really understand the format of it. And then Jane had mentioned that she thought the way it was laid out was kind of funky and suggested we think about reorganizing it. So the way the previous annual reports were organized was for in line with the charter for the committee. And so it's separated into these 3 sections, which is reports and data, status and implementation, and findings and recommendations. So that last bit, findings and recommendations, made sense to me. So I went and I filled that out. And I can skip ahead to that if you guys want to look at that. And I guess what's left for us to do is to figure out how we want to talk about all the work that's been done. And if we want to try to kind of like use the same format and plug it into reports and data and then status and implementation, or if we want to think about a different way to lay out the annual report. Any questions just on that?
Well, Kat, is there a specific format that it's supposed to be laid out in?
I don't think so.
It's just like,
Yeah. It's well,
or like a standard that like other committees write reports in?
that's a really good question. I will look. Oh, I can't minimize that. Okay, 1 second. I'm just gonna look really quick. Ignore my
Question.
I should, let's see. We've got memo. I don't see specific information on my end about what templates need to be included in the committee's annual report. I have templates for other things, but I don't see that one. Here's a staff report. If I'm applicable. Yeah, so I know that that's not terribly.
Well, in some ways, it gives us the freedom to maybe organize it the way that makes sense to us.
I think so. And I think if it's helpful, it just depends on what you want to share your report on. So when I write my reports, and I just finished, I apologize for not being able to send this earlier. It's pretty much all captured in the PowerPoint, but I just finished a draft annual report that, oh, that's yours, that I'll be sharing. So I can share that as well. And you can see the way I tend to, in the past, I have shared annual reports by going through policy sections. So like, how are we doing on progress towards different pillars? Because we actually won't have a lot of our data for this year until after July. I'm going to do a more comprehensive annual report in August that I'll be able to share as like basically I'm going to take the recommendations you all provide, take all the data from this year and create a comprehensive report. This is what we did for 24, 25. And then here's the recommendations from the committee. And here's how we're going to like advance all this moving forward that I'll present in the fall. But if it's helpful, I can share usually what I've put together for this year.
Yeah, I'm just thinking of, I mean, because I'm just trying to think about, what necessarily we would want to share. in our report that's not redundant from your report, I guess. Like what
If it's
makes
redundant though, too, like it's okay if we're on the same, because I've been sharing information with you all year, so it makes sense we would cover
yeah.
these. Um,
And I guess it would just be us, yeah, highlighting it and maybe more like a summary of some of the work that's been going on instead of as much detail. But the evaluation plan, I'm just thinking about some of the things that were noted last year. So like we could definitely update this and talk about the project management dashboard. We can also, or the dashboard, we could also talk about the decarbonization tool. That seemed like a big success. The evaluation plan, I'm sorry, I don't know if I remember, was completed, right?
yeah, it was used to inform the, I'm gonna share a link in the chat. That's my report. The evaluation plan that we completed last spring was used to inform how we structured the dashboard and how we structure our like internal operationalization. Oh my gosh, operationalization of the policy goals. So the evaluation plan helped us determine where we have data, where we don't have data, what we need to do to collect data, and then like what are the major like kind of low-hanging fruit opportunities for starting to institutionalize our policy goals so that they become something that's like sustaining versus something that is a passion project of a current employee. So that's how that was utilized to develop the dashboard, if that helps make sense of that.
And that makes sense that they would all be like interconnected and reinforcing each other.
Yeah.
Did you want us to look at this? This is
If
that
it's
you
helpful. Yeah, that's just the high level memo that I'm providing to the board that you all are, will totally have access to, but it just provides a little bit of context for the work this year. It's fairly short. Usually my annual report memos are like 20 pages long, but this one is just high level, what we worked on, how we addressed the committee recommendations from last year, and then the primary areas where we focused our work this year. And then typically the committee is able to provide a review of like what's going well, kind of what the district needs to focus on and prioritize, and like where progress has been sufficient or insufficient, or like, recommendations to the board of like how to better support the policy implementation in a way that's going to be more successful, or as we've said in the past, meet the urgency of the crisis. But it's also challenging because there's so many crises. So
yeah, thanks for I think this will be really helpful to pull from for filling this out. And I guess just since we're kind of like working on a quick timeline, I don't know if I would necessarily vote for restructuring the annual report this time around, since it might be easier just to use this layout and try to like plug things in where they are. I think one of and so I think we could probably do that. And I don't think it makes sense for us all to try to like wordsmith this together, but I wonder, thinking about the context of budget cuts and significantly reduction in force for the district. I think my question that lingered was, last year's annual report had some like constructive feedback about, fundraising and dedicating folks to certain things. And I feel hesitant to make any recommendations that are clearly like impossible to do in this funding climate. So maybe for us to think about like what do we want kind of our final findings or our recommendations to be? Do we have any other thoughts that might be constructive and helpful given our participation? And I'm really curious for Tess and Alma what your all takeaways were from the survey, and if you see opportunities to reach students in a different way that we could include in some of these like kind of bigger findings.
Yeah, both you and Barbie emailed me back about like wanting to see more of the data. And Tess and I really only looked through it pretty briefly yesterday as we were coming up with kind of like our main points and what we thought was most important. But there is a ton of data there. And um, I can share the spreadsheet of all of the responses with you, and then all of the statistics that are a little bit easier to go through than the short answer responses. But there's a lot of stuff about how to reach students and what students are interested in, so that could definitely be worked into this.
I think that'd be wonderful.
I love that. And what I was going to say that I was hoping was maybe I agree with scaling back recommendations, especially if you're letting people go. How do you have the people to even organize a community program? Like it's kind of pie in the sky right now, but that doesn't mean that that our recommendation can't be an impact. And I think a recommendation would be the inclusion of the student survey into the dashboard. And then we recommend, maybe we can select, or we, I don't know what that looks like, but what are those elements? Because there's a lot of questions, right? But it can't be everything, but, or is it? And I would let Kat respond to that. But I think recommending that the student survey be integrated into the dashboard, and that it be established as a annual survey or quarterly survey or what, but that, because that's doable and that creates policy and framework to make it not our passion project, but part of the framework of allowing the student's voice to be heard.
I absolutely agree with making it an annual survey, but I'm curious about what you mean about integrating it into the dashboard. Like, are you talking about like putting the results on the dashboard or using it as a measure of student engagement?
Well, it could be both, right? Knowing that the number of people that you released the survey to, those people that had the opportunity, and then the number that responded, you could look at what are students' average engagement, right? And then you could suggest specific tactics like, next time we're going to make sure it's in the newsletter, and we're going to do QR codes that we post in schools. And then you can track whether engagement has increased. So that's just one right off the top. But what was really powerful for me were the students' statements. It hit me. I was like, oh my gosh, this is my babies, right? I mean, I'm sorry, but I mean that if they don't know, they're not being included, and they're using sophisticated language that tells me they have the capacity and they're hungry for this information, but they're not being fed. So I think that their voice being established as a public facing piece, that's powerful accountability. Not sure they would let us go.
I really like that idea, but I'm kind of not concerned, but because we sort of created this survey, and like in the beginning we told people that we were going to like advise the board, and we sort of had a blurb about what we were doing with that information. I'm like kind of wondering, and also because it's not a formal survey that PPS did, what does that look like for putting it on like the dashboard? Is that actually feasible?
Yeah,
What I would say is that there would need to be also a recommendation that the stewardship of the survey, and when it's deployed, would be, it has to be seated somewhere. It can't just be like, what if y'all have moved on to do something else, even though but maybe the mechanism is that it's part of this committee because that is an established mechanism, and that students that sit on this committee steward that survey for their year of service. And if students continue, they can mentor other students so that it's part of the it isn't just, you know, Barbie, Cat, Tess, Alma, it's the committee, the students that serve on.
And to Tessa's point about it being like an officially supported survey, that could be just something that's included as a recommendation, that like the processes are developed to make it more of an official surveyor process, so it goes through all the proper things that need it to go through. And then yeah, the board can kind of work with staff to decide what that looks like. But
because I think what you've done, if I'm honest, it really needs to be high. I want the focus of this work to be the meat and potatoes and tofu, vegan, whatever, because I love tofu. And of our presentation, the students' voices, how they're being impacted, because at the end of the day, that's what this is all about. You, right? Your future, what we're doing in the community. So your choice, and whether you're better off or whether you're getting your needs met or whether you have access and whether you have a voice is, I think, foundational in the work that we can try to achieve.
Yeah, I like the idea of making it sort of an annual part. And it kind of gives a little bit more like purpose, because I feel like two student representatives can't like represent all of the students. So it kind of brings in more voices, which I think is good. And I feel like we could start building off of it, but I don't really know. I feel like I'm not really sure what we're going to do with this year's results. Like, are we planning on talking about it in the annual report, as in like we want to take this year's results and put them onto the dashboard, or like in the future we want to change the way that it's done?
so something from like a setting up the dashboard perspective side of things, some things that I can put on the dashboard are things like percentage of students from the survey that I identified as, you know, feeling like there's the feelings ones. We can kind of measure how feelings are changing over time based on the way that we're like providing opportunities. And then we can also look at things like how aware students are about the work that's happening over time. So you can look at just kind of the overall like awareness versus interest, which is something you all have already pulled from. And I can put that on the dashboard as like a metric or a graph. So if there's annual ones, you could kind of look at how the awareness line versus the interest line kind of like changes each year. And this one could just be an example to show that this is just from the community that you were able to sample, what the overall feeling, you know, what you're seeing, and with a more thorough and more supported survey tool, like what kind of data you could get from that. Yeah, so those are the kinds of things we can definitely put on there too. And those are things that in our evaluation plan, Echo Northwest had recommended we develop tools for measuring those things. We just haven't had the capacity or like direction to do that. And so it's, I think, very cool that you all created the survey and that it's by students and for students. I think that that's very important. And also like create some data just even to begin with that I can look at and thinking about how to prioritize my work and scope next year. Because yeah.
You know, Kat, what I while you were talking, I was thinking about how this is really like exactly what you said, and maybe even more. Like it's two pieces well, it's a lot more than that, but I think what about, and I'll just throw this out here, a pulse, a single question that's available to students anonymously that's just a rating, and we could use the suns or the stars or the, happy face to sad face about how optimistic they feel about the climate. Or, well, the student, you decide what the question is, but one question that is around feelings that can be that QR code that you can start to really saturate out there. And at any time, a student can respond, and, maybe they attend something and they want to say, hey, this is really great. Or they hear about some change and they want to say, I'm not feeling great about this. And that data over time would be really powerful.
I think kind of pulling it back to the purpose of the report as being like recommendations, it sounds like the students have created this great survey that provides a really great, quick kind of snapshot pulse at where a couple different things are. And it sounds like the recommendations are for PPS staff to, engage with that survey, to support the distribution of it so that we continue to like develop. Basically, it sounds like the recommendations are to continue the work of getting a gauge on student awareness and feelings around the climate. Does that sound accurate?
Yeah.
Like this should be
Yeah.
a priority for the board moving forward, is to make sure that this is something we're actively measuring.
Yeah, I agree. I think that we should definitely put those goals in the report and like maybe some of the like raw statistics, but I don't think that we should include like anonymous student comments or anything, because there are like hundreds of them, and I don't think that like I personally have the bandwidth right now to go through all of them and pick out the ones that can really do it justice. And so maybe we could save that for a more in-depth analysis of it.
And Barbie, I like your idea of the mechanism for how to collect further feedback. I was just trying to bring it back to like what the board recommendation would be around the desire to see more of this kind of feedback.
Yeah, I think whether it's an ongoing gauge, like a pulse, a student pulse, and super easy. It's one question in a form, and you would start to see a lot of data because people would want to see it, especially if it was something that was tied directly to the dash and they could see it go up and down. And be responsive. And then also that annual, because that's the work. That's the sausage making during the year, thinking about what are really refining those questions, and being able to really narrow down on what you're asking and how it supports the work. Because honestly, I think when I think about our recommendations, I just feel like right now, and maybe even not right now, what if we made a recommendation to the school board and said, we believe that you should do this or that, it would be taken into consideration, but I'm not sure it would be reflexive. That I don't know if they would just automatically say, okay, that's a great policy.
Well, and if it's helpful too, in thinking about how to frame recommendations, the board and the committees share what the goals of the district are. And then the board directs, senior leadership, like the superintendent, to reach those goals. And then it's up to the superintendent to create the strategy and the mechanisms for which we like accomplish that work. So like being able to say, our students were able to make this really great survey. It is going to be a huge recommendation, especially in alignment with the superintendent's goals and the district goals, to, focus, like you can only focus on so much with staffing and budget cuts. This is something you should focus on, is really getting the data and being transparent and then making adjustments to outcomes and projects based on what we're learning about student awareness and feelings. And then the board would then take that into consideration and make that recommendation to the superintendent. And I know my senior leadership team takes the committee's recommendations really seriously. And so when I'm proposing scopes of work, I I like share the committee's annual report and I say, this is what the community committee is saying that we need to be doing. So just to make sure that you all know that this isn't just like a, thing that exists in a vacuum, but it does get actively looked at and reflected on and informs the scope of work that I plan out. Yeah. I don't
No,
know.
that's really, no, thank you. Go ahead.
Yeah, so just thinking about like how to like inform those high level goals and why they're so important to help direct like where staff can prioritize our focus. Yeah, without feeling like you need to get into like the project management planning of it, of like this is exactly how that will take place, but more of like this is what what we would like to see next year is a more embraced system for collecting and sharing this data or whatever. Yeah, that kind of stuff is really helpful.
And I appreciate that you explain that because I think that this even more informed for me, it just enforces it because this is exactly the kind of thing that could be used as opposed to, a volunteer program. Any one person might not be able to do that, right? Or any one group. It's a little overwhelming. And like, what does that look like? So as much as I love the idea, it would be, I feel like we have only so much currency to spend.
Mm.
And I want to support the students.
Mm. I do want to offer a perspective on with the limited staff capacity, something like a volunteer support for volunteers to be more engaged and have PPS more accessible to volunteer programs is in itself not like an overwhelming idea, and it might be a helpful thing for us as a community to be really tapping into and considering and things like that. So I think like specifying and going into the weeds of what that volunteer program would look like might not be the tone that makes sense. Again, what I was saying about like the high level goals, but the last few I'm sorry, I'm talking so much for your annual report meeting. I apologize. But the last few annual reports have emphasized the need to increase capacity for PPS to pursue our climate goals because we're not pursuing them fast enough, as that's just the language that's been used. And I think that that's accurate. We're doing our best, but there's only so much. And so I don't think it would be unexpected for the committee to advocate for PPS to expand its capacity to pursue our goals, but it would kind of match the tone of the moment to acknowledge that like, increasing project managers, which has been the recommendation in past years, may not be the pathway forward this year, but looking at other ways to increase capacity might be wise.
So then, well, then I would say that it would be more, the recommendation would be focused around building capacity through the volunteer program at the school level.
Yeah, for sure.
For example, a school survey, teachers list things they could use help with and post it on their site. Again, I don't want to get into the weeds, but so that they could visualize that, oh, this is something we could put the framework out and send it to principals and say, hey, if you want to do this, you could, here's an idea. I don't know. We have a lot of engagement at my son's school, and it just it's really, I know how powerful it is. First of all, I just spent the whole weekend with 450 students and families. We camp out the whole entire school, and it's pretty epic. And it's like to be in a community of intentionality at that level of what we want to achieve for our kids, and have it be a Portland Public School. It's pretty powerful, so I know it can be done.
Yeah, I think I'm able to speak to the fact that there are really great examples of like strong community-based volunteer parent engagement programs. And I'm just going to sneak preview that we've rolled out the first year of our climate projects, and we absolutely need to build a more robust community support capacity system at the school level to support the teachers to do those projects. we learned a lot and it was all very good, but so I wanted to let you all know that that would be not a tone deaf recommendation. And that, yeah.
And it would align with like implementation of the PSEF grants.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
We need help.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've had amazing support in my FSF group, but I have done like a lot of the work
Yeah.
in like my group of like 20 people.
Yeah.
The thing I was going to say about the volunteering, and I realized that we're like getting a little bit off topic. But I think that if we were to set up such like a volunteering sort of organization to make it easier for people to volunteer for PBS, which would be amazing, it would be really, really important to make sure that it's a district-wide thing and that it's not like, okay, if your kid goes to this school, you're volunteering at this school, because parents at different schools have like vastly different capacities.
For sure.
And I think that it might just exacerbate inequalities if it was a school-based thing.
And to tie it back to the policy, just to, again, like not get into the weeds of what this looks like, from your committee's perspective, it could be something along the lines of, recommending that the district build out a district-wide volunteer support structure to advance policy goals that we know that we currently are really reduced in capacity, and like school gardens and like, those help with climate resilience and heat reduction and, schoolyard maintenance and all that good stuff. It can help with place-based learning, things like that, where you can kind of point out to which of the policy goals you would like, you can see a volunteer support, like that capacity helping, can help provide the board with the direction to think about like, okay, well, is this a recommendation we want to make sure that we're enforcing with the superintendent? And, what does that look like to have that support structure build out from like a supported centrally, but like existing at the school site level kind of perspective? I don't know.
I think it's both, right?
I'm not on the kitty.
No, I do think it is important. Exactly. Green schoolyards. There was something else you said.
Oh, just like, so there's a couple of really amazing examples of community support in our schools, like Eco Schools Network. They help with green schoolyards, garden, place-based learning type programs.
Place learning, that's what yeah.
Type programs. They go into cafeterias and teach K through 5 about like sorting their waste and stuff like that. Like,
I love that.
like those are all, and I'm so excited for beginning of next year because we have some amazing stories and pictures from our climate projects that are going to be available when the form is due tomorrow. So I don't have them prepared today, but like there's some pretty stellar examples of like what community support for those kinds of things can look like if it's well supported. So yeah. But I will say it's really, what I've learned from the community this year is that it's really hard to volunteer with PPS, especially around those types of like schoolyards and stuff. And so thinking about ways to better support them is one of my goals personally.
What are the barriers people face to volunteering?
Well, it depends on what they're trying to do, but one does not simply, there's certain things that really absolutely have to happen, like background checks, making sure we know which adults are on our campus, when they're on their campus. That's really, really important. Those are non-budgeable, which I think is great. But other things like, it's just for context, PPS only has a handful of project managers that support all of the project construction or infrastructure related projects. We're going from 6 project managers this year to 4 for next year. And we're also trying to do all the deferred maintenance and the bonds work and all of this stuff. And so it can be really challenging for volunteers to come in and have a project that they want to do on our campus and our infrastructure, because it requires somebody to then like be a project manager for that type of project. And so just thinking about like, these are questions I'm trying to have right now at the district, and that we'll be continuing to have, is just what does it look like to support and build out a community of support for people who are willing and ready and able and have funding to do meaningful work on our school campuses, like how do we make it easier to plant a tree or have clear guide? Like one does not simply plant a tree. There's a lot that goes into planting a tree.
Mhm.
It's going to maintain the tree, all that good stuff. Like it's complicated. And so yeah, just
Start
thinking,
today.
yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Hmm.
so again, that's getting like a little too in the weeds, pun not intended. But just to give you kind of an idea of what I've been getting feedback on this year and that I'll be including in my comprehensive report. And again, I apologize for not having had the capacity to like share some of that with you all prior to this meeting. It's been a interesting, yeah, couple of months. So.
Well, I remember it was recently, well, it was during the pandemic and that may have been updated, but the guidance, there was some guidance on the PPS website around how parents, community could make infrastructure changes like build a fence or update a garden or a patio or picnic tables or paint the, all the things. And there was a 10-page flyer that it linked to another school district. It referred to another school district that was using a community-based model for approval, that as long as you had the capacity and you demonstrated that you had the necessary skills and equipment that you could do it. That you just needed they abdicated the approval to the principal if it didn't require like a building permit.
That sounds amazing.
Yeah.
And I know well, and it was Portland Public Schools, and I think it's probably still online. I need to dive and find it because I know I have the link because I sent it to someone because we were building something at the school, and I was in charge of finding out how the approval process, what needed to happen, and that was the information that I was able to give to our vice principal so that we could update and have covered area for the kids while they ate outside.
I also want to mention really quickly that all of these recommendations I'm providing is also a direct result of the design team work we did last year, which is in that like nice report that I had sent, but hadn't had a chance to do like a full deep dive meeting on it where I could like walk you all through what that process was. But so just in case we need to like, and that is going to be included in the appendices for my report as well. They'll have access to that full community design report. I wanted to also make sure that Tess, I know that you have to leave.
Yeah.
That you have.
Yeah, I do have to jump off. Thank you guys then.
Thank you so much, Tess. We're not good. This is our last meeting, and we ran right up to time, but I think we are still. Can we agree that we're going to continue fine-tuning this, getting it done, but we'll communicate and send it out via email, since we're not going to be able to meet in person, or we don't have another scheduled meeting. And I think how does everyone feel about 4 recommendations?
Is
I feel
what
that's
standard? What did we do last year?
I don't remember. I think it was like 3 or 4 or 5.
4.
I personally think that's pretty good.
Yeah, I think that's reasonable.
Yeah, and I think it was 4. I'm visually remembering 4. I'm visualizing the slide in my mind, and I believe that it was 4. But it was also layered because it was around the work with the dashboard, and so
Yeah, okay. Well, I think 4 is good.
Yeah.
yeah, I love it. I mean, I really think it really encompasses a lot of the work that Kat, what you've been able to bring in terms of the work that you're doing in the background and the work that your teams are doing. And it's just, I want to think about how we can most effectively support you, because that's what's important right now. Because I know the work you're doing is amazing, and I know you do a lot of hard work. And so I don't think the committee, I think it's really, that's why I really want to focus on like the student voice and the administration. How can we support you? Because at the end of the day, that's what's important, and that's what's going to get us to our goals.
I appreciate that. I think that something that will help bolster the recommendations is to show how each recommendation connects to the overall like board and district goals of like student success, increased literacy. Matt, like there's quite a few that have shifted where it's like ninth grade success, increased attendance, increased literacy, increased math. Just really thinking about like one of my goals is to like help show how the climate policy is a tool through which we can actually increase student success and feelings of like engagement and joy and efficacy and community, which are all needed to want to come to school, from like make it a place that, you know, how can PPS become a model for what a future of solutions looks like is kind of my pie in the sky dream. So I think one of the best ways to get the community really excited about these policy goals is to really help tie how I think, you know, they're all in the same, it's all working towards the same thing. I think that will help get excitement around this work and help it feel less like asking for extra stuff and an opportunity to align with things that are already happening and bolster those things. And the last thing I wanted to mention really quick, that I don't know if I saw it, but just making sure to recognize that I think it's worth shouting out and recognizing that the board held really strong on their commitment to electrification with the bond money. They got a lot of pushback on that. It came up a lot. And so I think being able to talk about the letter that you all wrote and then also like providing that commendament to the board for holding true on the policy goals in that way, would be really
I have
impactful.
like a few sentences in here about that, but we
Okay,
can
cool.
beef that up more too.
Yeah, just to like, you know, yeah, it was a really hard, I think, political choice for them to have to be grappling with because it came up every single board meeting.
Yeah.
Um,
We'll talk about our,
it's, yeah. Sorry, I'm speaking in rambles, but I do
no, you're not. We get you.
and
Yeah.
and I appreciated all of your support and everything you all have talked about in terms of like how to prioritize this work is really, really helpful for me as uh, a very small team, like getting smaller team, to be able to help focus my work so that it's like what we are doing, we're doing really, really well. And that's like all I want is to do what we're doing well. And so instead of trying to do everything, being like, yeah, these are the like top things that are going to be the most impactful for our community to move this work forward. Yeah. Yeah.
I agree. I think it's around like, what are those effective tools, right?
Yeah.
I think they're already out there, but people need to push the button and do it. I'm really, really, I know that is a really hard decision. I was just thinking that was just sitting with me, in terms of when you're getting pushback from the community around cutting the electrification. You know what I mean? Like that can be a scary thing because that's probably one of the biggest things that keeps people in terms of what they aspire to when they serve in public to what they actually do, because they make concessions because you have to. But what does that look like? When you hold to your values of decarbonization. we have a pretty savvy board right now, because it's gonna really mean cost savings in the long term because of the efficiency that is being brought. But in the short term, it feels painful.
Mhm.
And in a time of uncertainty, it even feels more, are we making the right decision? So I appreciate and calling out their steadfast support towards creating a cleaner, better future for our kids.
Yeah, and I think the point that was brought up that without this, or like with this, we're on track to meet the decarbonization goals just seems huge to me. I mean, I think as a PPS part of that community, just knowing that we're on track to meet these amazing goals feels so wonderful and something to be celebrated. Um, and that without that decision, we wouldn't be, close.
And we know that because of our decarbonization tool,
Exactly.
because I think there's been we really want to get there, but there's been an implied like, is this even possible?
Yeah.
So when we finally saw the tool in action and saw the impact that those two modernizations or three modernizations would make in reaching our goals, we were like, oh my gosh, this is so exciting. We could actually do it. Like we were trying
Yeah.
really hard to do it, but we could actually do it. It's like, that's very exciting.
Yeah. It was like so helpful to have.
Yeah. So I'm hoping we can make sure that that decarbonization tool is utilized moving forward. And
And I
all.
do think that we could even bring that into the first recommendation. I mean, I'm assuming it would be utilized anyways, but when we're prioritizing strategies that, referencing the decarbonization tool would be useful as well there.
Yeah, I mean, we have a brand new operations structure. We have a brand new senior chief of operations role, and then Dan Young, who's been our chief operating officer, is leaving the district. So there's a few vacant positions in that leadership space. And so I think with a lot of transition happening with the board and with leadership, being able to emphasize the things that this is me talking to myself mostly. So I'm like, I need to do that in my report. Really emphasizing and spelling out the things that have been done that should be continued is really helpful.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, I think the decarbonization tool should just have its own spot in the body of the report so that we talk about the benefit of that and then can reference it below. Yeah. I'm thinking about this, like we have number 2 and number 4, and I wonder if like, do we want to beef out say any more thing more specific about focusing on transparency? It sounds like what we're saying here is just that we would be communicating what's going on using the dashboard. Do we want to say anything else about that? Is there more to share?
I love details. So, I can add a few sentences. But is it impactful to say maintain focus on transparency with students and the broader community? And I would say through utilizing the dashboard as a tool, ensure the entire community knows that this is available and track engagement.
Yeah, I think that publicizing the dashboard more would be amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, why not? It's a great tool. Like, I think it should be, I mean, I I feel like I have just been the last 2 weeks really managing to a lot of scarcity. It's happening everywhere, right? In the government, in the schools, the budgets, we're hearing budgets from everywhere. And everyone is feeling that. And I think that when you have that kind of oh no risk, you're afraid to publicize things, because what happens if it goes the other way? Now you have this thing out there that's, but I think that that's managing to risk and fear as opposed to, anticipating the good that comes out of it. We don't think about the risk of not doing the thing. We only think about the risk of doing the thing. And I think that this risk of not letting people know that there's a dashboard tool, making sure everyone knows. Everyone should know. It should be like part of the fabric of PPS. Because that's how you make impacts secondary, tertiary, quaternary. People take that home, they carry it into conversations, they spread that, they make different choices. They don't purchase something, they don't get the paper cup, whatever it is, because it's part of who you are. But it has to be at a level of integration that, exactly like Kat said, that it's not tied to any one person, because it's at the policy level. And it is, so the policy would be that the dashboard is maintained, and that maybe dashboard snippets are included in Portland Public Schools content, all district content. How often do they share all district information? Because I feel like I get so much information from my school that I'm not able to sort out what is from who. And I'm gonna be honest, I get a lot of information, but I also know I'm really active. So some of that's by choice. So the average person, how many district-wide announcements can they expect, Kat? Do you know?
I have no idea.
Yeah.
From a student perspective, the only district-wide announcements that I get are on like the Remind app.
Mhm.
And I don't know, they come like once a week and they're about like the most random stuff. Like I just got one today that was about like a vaccination and I'm not really sure what it was.
Yeah, I think it depends on what you opt into. And I know sometimes it's like drinking from a fire hose. It's kind of overwhelming and then people lose interest in even opening them. But you're making me think, Barbie, it would be interesting to do like separating the different groups into buckets and think about how they're like students, like is the dashboard something that teachers are showing students in science classes? Are they showing them the dashboard so that they know what, like, it would be interesting to look at the survey to think about how students are receiving information and then ways we can use the existing tools to share that out.
So yes, so I would say call out. I love that. I love that you said the buckets, because that's perfect. Like, okay, so we would say students integrate into curricula.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think starting at third grade, do they have access to computers?
As of when I was in third grade, minimal access.
Okay,
I
maybe
think if you just leave it at like, yeah, increasing,
integrate into curricula.
yeah, then that can be up to the, yeah.
Yeah. That is definitely a decision of at the teacher level, right? But I think like at some point, like if they're using computers, they at some point, like if it's fifth grade, right, that they get a laptop, then that's when, as part of their curricula, they go to the climate page and just check it out.
Mhm.
It's part of a lesson.
Yeah, one of my goals is for the summer is to create a list of resources for teachers who want to incorporate more like local place-based learning using PPS as like a living laboratory kind of situation. So, because a lot of these schools also have like solar on their roofs, and it's like, are the students even aware? And yeah, that's something that I heard at a conference is if you install solar on an elementary school and the second grader can't tell you what happened and why it was important, then you haven't done your job well enough of making sure this community is engaged with like what is happening around sustainability in school. So that's been kind of my perspective.
And on the survey, on the student answers, there was a short answer spot for what PPS work are you aware of? And I got some really interesting, there were some really interesting responses because some people just like knew about this one random thing and they were like, our school did this. And I was like, amazing. And then some students are like, we have recycling bins. It's like, great.
That's funny. So, and that's
Because maybe, yeah,
Oh yeah,
yeah, but it's just
yes,
funny that that's
yes,
like
no, that's like some people were like, I don't know. Some people were like, we have recycling bins, and then some people wrote like oh, our school did like a whole campaign to do X, Y, and Z. It's like very like varied responses.
Oh, that's so interesting.
Yeah,
I know, I love it.
kind of fun to read through them.
And it just goes to show that you really got like a spread of people, at least if it was mostly a grant. You know, I was kind of worried that it would all go to the PSEF groups and then everybody who was responding would be really knowledgeable and that wouldn't be that interesting. So that's really
It
cool.
was like 70% people who were not involved in stuff.
That's great.
Yeah, it really was.
Yeah, well done.
Oh yeah, I think you home run. I think it's really powerful. I can't say enough. I mean, I work with a lot of people and a lot of public data and have a lot of really intense conversations at the state level about what's important and what we want to communicate externally. And this survey is a home run in terms of being able to gauge exactly what we're talking about. So the hard work that you put in, I really, really believe that it's going to pay off. That it's going to be one of those things that before you graduate, you're going to be like, you know, because it blooms and blossoms. I really believe that. But it's going to take that continual work and commitment of people like Kat to carry it on, right? To carry it forward for other people, and also for you to teach, you know. I believe that you see one, you do one, you teach one. Now you've done one, now you get to teach.
I wanted to throw out that we got like 17 minutes or so left if people want to think about, yeah, what next steps with this report look like.
When's the report due?
So that's a great question. Materials for
Yeah.
the board meeting are due on June 10th, which is Tuesday. I
Okay.
do believe that the committee has to vote or express approval for the report to be done. So Barbie, I'm not sure if you have capacity to like reach out to the other committee members or call some people and make sure that they've looked at it and are okay, since there wasn't a quorum here to vote,
Mhm.
to just make sure that people look at it and add to it before it gets approved.
Yes.
Um,
So let's get into a little couple details. If it's due the 10th and we are still doing a couple little minor tweaks, right? Flushing it out, when do we want to let people know we need you to review it and reply with an affirmative or your requested changes by this date? What date?
I mean, that would probably be up to Alyssa based on when she was feeling good about it.
Yeah. And she went off camera. She disappeared like, not me.
I have this like plate of food next to me and it was like
Oh.
tempting me. Sorry.
Please have a big
No,
bite.
I'm always
Please,
during
as
meetings.
a day-long meet, or encourage people to eat in there.
Totally.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess my question is, Barbie, do you have time to add to this and to like contribute? I just feel it's more like I just don't want the bulk of it to just be on my brain.
I do. And I had put together like just some, like, you know, me going on and on. And so I already have some stuff to kind
Oh,
of put
great.
in to support
Cool.
in terms of like the way that we have discussed many of these things throughout the meetings. That like I capture the information and I'm like, we talked about this and this is really what I heard people saying, and you know, and how does it fit into this area? I would love to add more of that.
Great.
And I, before we end, also, I just want to make sure because I was in transition and there was a discussion around the changing the format. I'm fine with that. I didn't say because I was like, I couldn't figure out how to unmute. So I'm fine with that. I think I don't know how other people feel. I think if that is also should be something that we include with the vote, that we ask people to review it and please indicate if they are okay with the updated format, or if that's not necessary. Kat, what do you think?
I think if you want to add what you were thinking, in the past, I believe the committee has approved the overall content of the report and said, go forth and wordsmith with the approval of like the content at there. So I think if the bulk of like the general kind of main takeaways that you want are there, then you can circulate it earlier and let people know if they like approve it with the condition that it's like, you know, just wordsmithed a little more or whatever. But I think that's how that's letters and reports have been done in the past was so you'd have some time to let people know, but also you can just kind of like paste in the things that you want to cover and they can let you know if they feel like it's appropriate or not. Does that help?
I have another question.
Yeah.
I don't know if I misunderstood something, but what I thought was happening was in addition to the annual report, we're gonna make like a summary or something to like actively present to the board
Yeah.
at the June 24th board meeting.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So when I was sending the information to Alyssa about the survey, I was under the impression that that was specifically for the presentation to the board and not so much for this. Was that not other people's understanding?
So the report to the board is a summary of the annual report.
Okay, so it's both.
Yeah, so it kind of it's all the
Okay.
it's just a smaller version of like what's in the written part.
Okay.
And so and I apologize, I don't know if I saw this, but if it has the we definitely want to make sure there's like the student section part of it.
Okay.
Yeah.
And who's presenting that to the board? Is that going to be you?
That's another great question. So the committee presents so I'll introduce a few slides that talk a little bit of like high level about what PPS did this year, and then I'll introduce the committee to present. And so whomever is available to present on the 24th, you're available. I think
Is
you
it-
I
available.
hypothetically could be. I'm not going to be out of town like I thought I would be. It is my birthday though.
Oh,
So I'd rather not.
yeah, that's
But
great.
I'm not doing anything, so I absolutely could if other people weren't available.
Well, so you're still sharing your screen.
I forget. Totally. Thank you for saying that. I was gonna check my my calendar, but maybe I'll hold off then.
Tuesday and it's virtual or in person?
I would recommend in person if you can, but it can be virtual if you need it to be.
And it's at the 501 Dixon
Yeah, it's in the big boardroom.
down. Okay.
Yeah, on the first floor.
Okay. Well, I really, Tess, it's your birthday. She go first?
It's Alma.
Alma, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Alma, Alma, it's your birthday. But I think you're having the student, but I also it's up to you. But I would just really love to encourage you. I envision the students presenting, and just getting an opportunity to just have your voice heard and but if I'm good too.
No, yeah. I can totally get back to you guys on that and talk to my family about plans. I think the rest of my family is out of town, so I don't think there
Oh.
should be a problem. But I will get back to you on that.
And up to 3 people can be up there to present. I definitely want to make sure that there's like another community member with Alma present. I don't want it to be like Alma need to present the whole thing. So Barbie, I'm not sure if you're available like as the chair to be there and present. Or we can also like, yeah, if you want to ask the other committee members if they're available.
Yes, and I was actually hoping that Alyssa and I wanted tonight, Alyssa, I would love to nominate you as incoming chair. If you would like to accept, I really think you would be absolutely outstanding. And it would make my heart so just like, yes. Because I could just see the amazing things you can do. But I don't want to put you on the spot either.
Thanks, Barbie. Yeah, no, I'm game. I'll do it.
So
big
I kind of like
to
the
fill.
incoming student. It's like the perfect sandwich.
Yeah.
Don't you think? I think that's really nice. I only want to say like 1 or 2 words or not at all. Also good not. I do, if you knew how many times I do presentations, now I'm like, what? How many people? They just sent me my registration number for my next one. It's 183.
Oh my
And
God.
they told me, oh, you're only probably gonna get like 30 or 40 people. I was like, okay. Um, so I'm happy to do it. But we can also just let's put it on our calendar in person the 24th. And Alma, you'll get back to us and let us know.
I have to check with my partner too to make sure I can go, but I'll put it on my calendar for sure and get back to everyone.
And as a quick reminder, and I'm not sure how you would want to handle this, but so the committee selects a chair and then the chair gets approved by the board. And so Barbie, while you're making your calls to folks, if that's something you want to mention, I have not heard anyone else jump at it. So I don't know that there would be opposition, but I just wanted to throw out there that that's the process. And if that seems like something the committee is excited about, then I can write the resolution for that would go into anyways, the board to approve a new chair for the incoming school year. If that's something that you guys want to do officially on the 24th, I can get that done by Tuesday. So.
I would love to do that, Alyssa. And again, you're going to get back to us about whether or not, but I think that would be great, and I will most definitely. And do I have the most recent link for this?
Yes, you do. Yeah, and I've been
I
just put all these notes to it.
So I'm like, I'm not moving around. Okay. Then I will, and I'm going, I'm a chaperone tomorrow. Tomorrow is the annual Oaks Park Day.
Oh,
fun.
sweet.
That's so
Busy.
So I'm a chaperone for the 8th graders.
Oh my gosh, it's gonna be wild.
So I'm going to be hitting it hard early, but I'm going to get up early and I'm going to work on this in the morning. And then I'll send you an email and let you know when I've done so you can get in there and whatnot. And then when I get back, I will send out my email, and then I'm going to, if you send me, you have the list of everyone's phone numbers. If you send it to me, then that way I'll send it out and then I'll call everyone like Friday evening through Saturday, try to get a hold of everybody to let them know. And then I'll document it also in an email.
Perfect.
Okay.
On all of that note, I wanted to share 2 exciting updates, one of which is that the Climate Crisis Response Committee applications are available for people to apply. Anyways, so if you know anybody who might be interested, please share out the application link. I had the original deadline as tomorrow, but I'm gonna extend it to June 30th. And then depending on how things go, I might open it up again at the beginning of the school year. But I'm hoping that once the school year is over, as people are doing things and have a minute to breathe, then maybe they'll get a chance to apply for stuff. I also know it's kind of a hard time to do public anything, so I fully respect people's like non-engagement. So I just wanted to let folks know that that's out there. And then the other thing I wanted to share is like a totally personal note, which is that this week is my 3-year PPS anniversary. So I'm just like, oh, thanks for, being here and, participating in this committee. It's one of the things I most look forward to in my work is getting to connect with you all. So, yeah, I just appreciate you all and excited to wrap up the year together on the 24th, with a very exciting and probably it's the last board meeting of the year. So it should be I was going to say mellow and then that's going to jinx it. So I'm just going to say
Yeah.
it's going to be good because
It's gonna be good. Well, the entire community is better off with you in it, Kat.
Agreed.
Oh, that's very sweet.
Yeah.
We're very glad we stole you away from it.
Yeah. 2 years of moving mountains, that's for sure.
That's very sweet. Yeah. Yep. Thank you. I really appreciate that. I moved here for this job, so it means a lot to hear you say that. I'm part of the community, so thank you.
How old do students need to be on the committee?
I'm sorry, what'd you say?
How old do students, what grade is there?
It can be any grade. I've been recommending high school students apply just because of the level of like kind of commitment and yeah, feeling of
Well,
a really ambitious 8th grader could absolutely manage it,
Mhm.
Well, I was actually thinking, I know some incoming high school students
Oh, well, yeah.
from
Great.
McDaniel they were part of the Peace Off Club at Bridger.
Yeah.
So I wanted to encourage them when I see them because I'm going to be on the field trip with all the incoming freshmen tomorrow.
There you go.
So I'm going to get you that
Doing
application.
some recruitment. Yeah.
You're going to get like 50 applications.
That's a good problem to have. So,
Awesome.
yeah.
Yes. All right. Well, the non-official quorum, I think, can be adjourned. And I just want to say thank you to everybody. I just feel like I feel like we need to have another party, but we need some way to get together, but now is not the time. We'll do it in spirit.
Yeah. Well, if the committee is like adjourned between July and September, so it wouldn't be a public meeting if you all got together in a park.
That's actually a great idea.
Whereas it is a public meeting if you get together any other time. So I wanted to plant that seed, but yeah, it'd be fun.
Yeah, that would be fun. Yes. All right. All right. I'm gonna plan something. Actually, and I'm hoping my son will join the committee.
Oh,
Sweet.
Because he did the Peace F Club. But I
Oh.
can't push. It's gotta be his decision, And now this is public. Okay.
He's been called out.
It's archived for at least 100 years on video.
Yeah. Yeah.
I always think about that when I'm eating on video. I'm like,
Oh my gosh, that's scary.
But yeah, thanks everyone. I appreciate you.
Thank you. Nice to see you all.
Nice to see you.